Hello, all, and welcome back to another NKF Live episode from National Kidney Foundation. I'm your host, Marlena Chesner, NKF's Digital Content Development Manager, and today we are discussing IgA nephropathy, or IgAN, and clinical trials, including the ICAN trial. I am joined by Dr. Miriam Chung, a nephrologist or kidney doctor from Mount Sinai, Sarah Leatherman, a clinical trial director from Boston University, and Susan Fisher, a person living with IgAN. So I'd love to get started with some introductions. Dr. Chung, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work you do with people living with kidney disease?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on this program. I'm a kidney specialist from Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, and I'm the clinical director of for the glomerular diseases program at Mount Sinai. I evaluate and treat people with different types of kidney disease, and I specialize in the rare kidney diseases such as IgA nephropathy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today. Sarah, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with clinical trials?
I'd be happy to. My name's Sarah Leatherman. I am both a faculty member at Boston University in the School of Public Health, where I teach students how to run clinical trials and the basics of what clinical trials are, as well as working with the VA healthcare system, running large multi-center national clinical trials in our veteran population on all sorts of diseases that affect veterans from day to day.
Incredible. We're so lucky to have you here as well. And Susan, our IgAN warrior, can you give us a little overview of your journey?
I was diagnosed in 2004, 21 years ago, almost exactly. It was quite it was hard to be diagnosed, I should say, is what I'm trying to get to say, is that I went through all kinds of testing with urologists and everything before they finally did the kidney biopsy and they diagnosed the IgAN. And I went through a very uh, tortuous 10 months of high dose prednisone, which did put me in remission. And I pretty much have been able to stay off of any kind of dialysis, living with it. There are some definite issues daily when you have this disease. And I did do a trial back in 2016. And I really was fortunate that I was chosen to be able to do the trial. I have everything positive about trials. My first nephrologist refused to let me do any trials, and he retired. So I went to Ohio State University, was driving 2.5 hours each way to my doctor's appointments, and they actually do a lot of study in the IJN, and they got me onto a trial, and it was a great experience for me.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. And thank you for being, willing to come on and share your story with us. Now that we've all got our introductions, let's kick this discussion off. Dr. Chung, can you give us a definition and overview of what exactly IgAN is?
Yeah, so IgAN or IgA nephropathy, it's a kidney disease in which your body's immune system makes too much of a certain type of antibody called IgA. And IgA is a protein in the blood, and this excess IgA can build up in the kidneys and cause inflammation and damage in the kidney. And over time, this inflammation in the kidney can lead to scarring of the kidney tissue, which can then cause the kidney function to be reduced and kidney disease to progress. And when the kidney disease progresses, then it lowers the kidney's ability to do its job, which is to filter waste from the blood. And the severity of this IgA kidney disease, it varies from person to person.
Susan said that she had a hard time getting diagnosed. Is that typical for this? Has diagnosis changed in that time?
Unfortunately, it is typical because there's no blood test that diagnoses it. People can have certain type of symptoms. We can see blood in the urine only microscopically, so patients cannot see it. Only in the urine test we may be able to see. However, the only way we can diagnose it is by something called kidney biopsy. It is an invasive procedure. Unfortunately, an easy way to diagnose it.
And how is it treated?
So it could be treated in several ways. And I think to help understand this, it's important to know how IgA kidney disease develops. And there is this 4-hit hypothesis for IgA kidney disease, where this happens in 4 steps, like a chain reaction. And your body normally makes this protein IgA1, which is it's a normal reaction that helps the body to fight infections. But in IgA kidney disease, in this hit 1, your body makes the bad IgA1, which is the abnormal IgA1. And then it hit 2, the body thinks this bad IgA1 is dangerous, so your body makes antibodies to attack this abnormal IgA. And in hit 3, this bad IgA1 and the antibody, they form clumps together called immune complex. And then in hit 4, these immune complexes go to the kidneys and get deposited in the kidney filters, which will then cause inflammation and cause damage to the kidney. The treatment process sort of focuses on all these different hit levels. And one of the ways is to treat supportively to decrease further damage and scarring of the kidney filters by controlling blood pressure and lowering the protein level in the urine. And there are medications that help with this. It's in a class called ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers. And these medicines help lower blood pressure and help lower urine protein level. In addition to this class of medications, we have other class of medications called SGLT2 inhibitors. And then we have the newer medications that block endothelin receptors that also help lower urine protein levels in people with IgA kidney disease. So that's one of the ways to treat IgA. But the other way also that's important is to give a medicine that can lower your immune system. And this is important because IgA is part of the immune system, so we have to lower the system to lower the production of IgA and to lower the damage. And one of the ways is having medications that focus on blocking a specific part of the immune system called the complement system. And this complement system is part of the immune system that gets activated when there is an infection. And this triggers a chain of protein reactions, which is a normal reaction. But in IgA kidney disease, this complement system can be overactive, and this can cause further injury to the kidneys. So there are medications that target that. Then we have another type of treatment that contains medicine called budesonide, which is a type of steroid. This medicine is designed to be released in the gut where this bad IgA is thought to be made. So it targets the gut immune system with the goal of reducing this production of the IgA.
It is so wonderful to hear about all of these newer medications coming out, all thanks to clinical trials. So I'd like to switch over to Dr. Leatherman and ask, what is a clinical trial? What is the purpose of them?
So a clinical trial is really our best tool for comparing medications to one another and how well they work at treating the diseases they're targeted to treat. Generally speaking, a very basic approach to clinical trials is that you have a new medication or intervention that you're interested in, and it's being compared to either something that's already used frequently or what we would call a placebo, which is effectively no medication. And the idea is that we assign patients who decide to participate in the clinical trial at random to one of those two treatments. So a patient could get the new prospective treatment that we're interested in testing, or they could get whatever is they would normally receive from their doctor or a placebo. And the reason that we do that is so that we can, at the end of the study, measure how much better patients do on the new treatment that we're trying to test. These studies are large and complicated. And then we ask a lot of patients, frankly, right, to come in and trust us as researchers and as clinicians that we're trying to do something better for you. We're trying to offer you a better option, and also gives you an opportunity as a patient to give back to other patients with your same condition who might benefit if the treatments turn out to be beneficial. It could take quite a long time. We often want to follow patients for a long time and have them come in and ask them a lot of questions about their experience with their disease, their experience on the medication, ask them about how much they're taking the medication. Are they doing it the way we've asked them to take it? Ask them about any side effects they might be experiencing as a result. And all of that data collection helps us better understand how well the medication works at treating the disease that we're interested in, and also how safe it is. So clinical trials' primary goal is to find something that works at treating the disease, but it's also really important for us to be able to profile how safe those new medications are, especially compared to existing medications where the side effect profile might not be as extensive as it could be in a new medication, or a new medication might have a better side effect profile. And I think particularly in complicated diseases like the ones that we're talking about today, it's nice to have lots of options. So if something doesn't work for a patient, we can try something else and know what the impact of that is going to be, both on their disease and also on other parts of their health, right? Does it raise their blood pressure when we didn't expect it to, or does it make them really tired, or all sorts of other things that could affect their quality of life?
I'm curious, Susan, I know you went to this new clinician and that's kind of where you were introduced to clinical trials. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience? What was enrollment like for you?
Actually, it was really very easy. My nephrologists down at Ohio State are involved in some trials, and they asked me if I would be interested because I would qualify with the disease and having had the biopsy positive. It was 2015 when we started the process, and I had to have consistent blood pressure readings for a while. And I think it was January when we started going through the actual process. What was fortunate, I work at a credit union, and the one I was working for at the time, they really worked it for me so that I would actually go down to Columbus on Sundays so that the first thing in the morning on Monday, they would see me at Wexner Medical Center to do the blood draws and give me the new week of medication or whatever. And then I could still head back and be at work by noon. It worked out very well because they compensated like a per mile for my driving, and that actually helped me cover for a hotel and meals. It was really good. I mean, they really treated me very well. First day of medication was the craziest because they do actually basically seven blood draws that day, because they were doing it half hour and an hour, so forth. And they really took good care of me. They, made sure I had meals, and it was a good experience. While I was on the trial, and even afterwards, we found it didn't really lower the spill of protein much in my urine. However, I felt like my body was using my proteins better while I was on that trial because my hair was growing better. I started having very thin hair after being diagnosed because of, I guess, my proteins not being used well by my body because I'm losing so many of them. Is that something that sounds correct?
It's hard to say whether that was from the study medication or not. The hair growth is not typical, but I think that also speaks to the fact that in clinical trial, there's more eyes monitoring the patient. And because you're being closely monitored by multiple eyes and tests, I do think sometimes that does translate into even better patient care just because of the degree of monitoring there is.
Funny because I had people saying, well, why would you do a clinical trial? I would never do that. I'd be afraid to. And I said, first of all, I'm not married, never had children. So it wasn't like I had to worry about if I felt sick or something, having to take care of other people. I felt there's nothing to lose at all. And if it helps even one person, then it's worth doing.
And I think that is just so incredible. I think anyone out there who has the same disease is thankful for people like you who agree to volunteer in a study like this. I'd also like to rewind a little bit and ask from Sarah about the enrollment process. What are some of the steps that someone's going to go through?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, Sue, you alluded to some of this with how much testing was required and blood draws and things like that you had to do in order to even get started. And that's very common, right? Because generally speaking, we want to find people who, when we give them these medications and we are able to measure whatever it is that we're interested in measuring at the end of the study, that the difference that we find is truly attributable. Like we can really point to the intervention as the reason for that difference. And so enrollment can take some time. Sometimes it requires going through quite a list of what we call inclusion and exclusion criteria. So the things that you'd absolutely need to have true about you in order to enroll, and things that absolutely need to not be true in order to enroll. There's some very common ones, things like age are very common inclusion criteria, and those can be disease specific. We often don't want to do experiments on people that are pregnant, and so that's a very common exclusion criteria as well. And then depending on the disease that we're interested in, we might measure things like the protein levels in your urine or your serum creatinine, your blood pressure, all of these things that we want to make sure are meeting the criteria of the disease and also sufficiently controlled so that, like I said, when we get to the end of the study, we know that the difference that we saw is because of medications. You may often be approached by your own clinician or a nurse when you come in for a regular visit who will say, it looks like you're probably eligible for this study. Are you interested in that? If you are, somebody from the trial will come and explain to you what's going to happen in the study, how long it's going to take, how often you'll need to come in to have measurements taken, how often you'll need to take medications, and they'll ask you to sign something called an informed consent. And the point of that is to make sure that you understand the potential risks associated with being in that study. Because we are looking at new medications, and sometimes the risks are unknown, right? If it's a new medication that we haven't tested extensively in humans yet, things might come up. Now, there's usually studies that precede that give us some indication, but we want participants to understand that this doesn't come without some risk. And if you as a patient are willing to accept that potential risk, then you would sign that informed consent. And what would happen next is called randomization, where we randomly decide which of the interventions you as a participant are going to receive. Intervention that you are randomized to will determine your course in the study. It'll determine probably how often you need to come back. It'll determine whether you can take the medications at home or maybe need to have them injected by coming into the clinic. It may also impact how long you'll be involved in the study. And every study is different. And so that would be up to the study team to explain to you. But the enrollment process really is a conversation to make sure that you as a patient understand what could happen to you, the potential risks, and also the potential benefits, why we think the study is important, who it could impact going forward, because we want you as a patient to have all of the information before you make this decision about your own health.
I do love how informed you try and make the patient before getting into something like that. So I would also like to hear from Dr. Chung about some of the studies that are currently going on right now.
IgA and kidney disease, it's an exciting field now because there's so many new advances and studies going on, and there are several trials going on, and there are new medicines being researched currently that's not approved or out yet. And there are certain medications that target certain what's called growth signals in the immune system called APRIL or BAFF. And these growth signals help immune cells called B cells to grow and survive. And these B cells are responsible for making these antibodies like IgA. So these medicines that inhibit these growth signals can turn down the signals that's pushing the immune system to make too much of this IgA. So there are clinical trials looking at those medications that block those growth signals. And then there are other studies going on that's looking at a part of immune system called the complement system we had talked about before that gets overactive in people with IgA kidney disease. So different trials look at the different parts of the complement system and block at the different levels of the complement system. So there are ongoing trials about that. And then there's also a trial looking at blocking a protein called CD38. It's a protein that's found on certain cells, including immune cells, which plays a role in regulating the immune system. So right now, just even as we speak, there's multiple trials looking at different ways to target lowering this IgA kidney disease damage.
Which one does the IgAN study fall into? And I'm going to cheat and ask you to say the medication name.
I was hoping you would say it first. Okay. Sure. No, the IgAN study is a study evaluating the effectiveness and safety of a study drug called ravulizumab. And this is a type of medicine that calms down the part of an immune system. And it works by blocking a specific part of the immune system, the complement system, where it blocks a certain protein called the C5 protein. And this plays a role in causing inflammation and damage in the kidney. So By blocking a part of the complement system may help reduce kidney inflammation and slow down the damage. The treatment lasts for about 2 years, and during the study, the patients are assigned to either get the study drug or to get the placebo, which looks just like the study drug but has no active ingredients. And then during those 2 studies, the patient will be monitored with physical exam and blood work and a urine test, lab studies. And at the end of the 2-year study period, the patients will have the option to receive a study medication for longer time, and that's optional, and that's what's called the open label period.
And that sounds like one of the big benefits of joining a clinical trial is you might be able to continue taking the medication before it's actually, out on market.
Yeah, we have, several drugs that's approved now in the last few years, but all those drugs had to go through these rigorous studies, and these studies are rigorously designed and they're very closely monitored for safety and side effects as well as their effectiveness too.
Who can participate in the IgAN study? Are they still accepting participants?
So to participate in the study, you have to be diagnosed with IgA kidney disease based on kidney biopsy. They have to have a certain amount of protein in the urine and have to be above 18 years old. They also have to be treated with a stable dose of a maximally allowed blood pressure medication on a stable dose for at least 3 months before being eligible to join the study.
Perfect. And now, Dr. Leatherman, you mentioned earlier that sometimes your clinician or doctor will come forward and present this idea to you. Are there other ways that you can learn about clinical trials and if it's a good option for you?
Absolutely. Probably the very best way, if you're just interested in knowing what clinical trials are available or if you might be eligible, is a website called clinicaltrials.gov. This website is where every clinical trial in the United States and many international trials will register the information about their studies. And so if you were interested in studying IgA nephropathy, you could put those keywords into the search at clinicaltrials.gov and you would get a whole list of studies that have concluded and are actively enrolling patients. If you click on the links for each of those individual studies, you can get all sorts of information about where they're enrolling, the types of patients they're enrolling, some of the basic things that they plan to measure. It's a super great resource for that. And there's hundreds and probably thousands of trials ongoing at any given time. And so it's a pretty neat way. You also could start the conversation with your doctors. I think many large healthcare facilities are active in clinical trials all the time. And so doctors are paying attention often for the best potential care for their patients. I think particularly in cancer, clinical trials are usual care. It's normal care. And so oncologists pay a lot of attention to the trials that exist. But you absolutely could go to your doctor. If there's not a treatment that's working, is there a trial I could try? And they probably will be up to date on that information and know. But I think those 2 places are probably your best resources. You could Google. Dr. Google's always available, although the trials registry and your care team are probably the best places.
Where can people find more information on the IgAN study?
Well, there's 2 places. You could try clinicaltrials.gov. In fact, I read the listing this morning for the study to make sure that I was prepared for this conversation. But it also has its own website at IgAN Clinical Study. So if you search those terms, you'll find it on Alexion's website. And it's actually a very nice, easy to read webpage about the basics of the study and tells you where you can get more information as well.
Wonderful. As we are winding down this conversation, I'd love to hear from everyone, starting with Susan. What advice do you have for people who are thinking about joining a clinical trial?
When I joined my clinical trial, they do give you an out. If you feel that you need to drop out of it, then they do give you that. So I want people to realize when they are signing up for it, if they're not comfortable at some point, they're able to leave. But I felt once I started, I was so comfortable with it and I was taken such good care of. And like I said, if it was going to help any one person, it was worth doing. Even if it didn't help me, but it helped somebody else, it's still worth doing.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Dr. Chung?
Thank you for that, Susan. That was great. I advise my patients to consider clinical trial. It's another option that's available for people with rare diseases like IgA nephropathy, where there is no one-size-fits-all treatment in this disease, and the treatments need to be tailored to each individual. So it's another option that's available. And also to really consider if their current treatment is not working well, or if they don't want to take what's available, because of side effects. It's just another option that's there. As I said before, all approved drug treatments that's shown to work have gone through these rigorously designed clinical trials. During the trial, there's multiple people keeping an eye on the patient. I have seen my patients really, I feel, get better care because it's not just one physician, but multiple staff taking care of.
And Dr. Leatherman.
It's hard to think of much to add to both of those, but I can only echo, I guess, which is that we can't find better treatments for people without clinical trials. Not everybody will be comfortable with that, and that's okay. But for those who are, it's a wonderful way to give back to patients like you. It's a known fact that patients in clinical trials tend to get better and more care than patients that aren't, because of all of the eyes that are watching, not just from your doctors and the people treating you in the study, but from external groups of people that are paying super close attention to everything that's happening. While you always have the option to withdraw, as Sue mentioned, you can always leave the study if it's not working for you. There are people watching to make sure that the patients that are participating as a whole are safe. And if there's any signal of something that's not safe, we're going to catch it, and we'll catch it early to do the best that we can for patients, because we appreciate what you're giving as a person that is involved in that experiment.
Thank you all so much for this incredible conversation. We've unfortunately run out of time, but I really think this was such great and valuable information, and I hope that those who are watching got some real value out of it. And to those who are watching, if you have any questions that we did not get to, please post them in the comment section on the social media platform that you're using to watch this program. We will do our very best to get those answered within the next couple of days. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in and sharing your time with us. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Alexion, for their generous support in making this program possible. To learn more about the IgAN trial and see if you qualify to participate, visit the link in the video description. And on behalf of the National Kidney Foundation, I wish you all good health.